Blessed morning, everyone. This is Dr. Vincent Padilla, and for this session, I'm going to discuss about assigning students into cooperative learning groups. There are 6 different ways to assign students to cooperative learning groups. First, instructor assigned groups. The instructor can assign learners to groups to ensure that the groups are heterogeneous in terms of their academic ability, ethnic background, gender, and any other factors that the instructor feel are important. The instructor tries to make sure that best friends and even worst enemies are not in the same groups. That's instructor assigned groups. So ideally, this can be done by giving, for example, a diagnostic test, and the result of the test will be used to assign students to which group. Second, randomly assigned groups. In randomly assigned groups, the instructor can simply ask the students to count off or do numbers off and placing them in different groups according to their assigned number. Let's say all ones will group together, all twos will group together, or all threes will, and so on. When I started teaching cooperative learning, I used to assign a class uh, randomly. So I would ask them to count off, and the first five, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, belongs to one group. And second five, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 belongs to the second group. The third group, like 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 belongs to the third group, and so on. So that's how I assign students. No, I did it actually randomly. But of course, there are also benefits, advantages, and disadvantages about simply assigning students randomly. Okay. Third, social integration groups. This is another way of assigning students or the class into cooperative learning groups. No, in social integration groups, you at the beginning of the class you can ask students to text you or use the messenger to message you as to the names of the persons or the classmates that they would like to work with or the names of the people they do not like to work with, and based on this from the response of the students you can make decision as to how the students will be grouped or assigned into groups. So that's social integration. Fourth is subject matter related groups or same interest groups. So in these groupings, no, you simply ask the students about their interests. So let's say you are teaching research, no, like in my case, I'm teaching research one and research two. So I have a class of, let's say you have a class of 45 students and you ask them about their interest, no, the topic, subject matter that they would like to go into. And you group them according to their interest, subject matter interest. That's number four. Fifth way of grouping or assigning students into cooperative learning groups is the geographic groups. So basically, the idea here is those who live in the same community, the same area, are assigned together. Especially during the pandemic, no, what I did, I assigned students, although we did not have face-to-face, we have online modular classes. I still group them. There are, since many of my students, if not all of my students, are already of legal age. That means they are already allowed to go out of their house. But since there is a restriction of travel, they cannot just travel anywhere. So the idea is there is a need for them to really sit down as a group to discuss important matters no related to their assigned topic. For example, they can do that one because they more or less live in the same area or community. So that's geographic assignment or groupings. So students are grouped based on where they live, no, the community they live. And finally, the self-selected groups. The self-selected group in this grouping, you simply the instructor simply asks the students to group themselves. Okay, so at the beginning of the class, let like if you are we're having a face-to-face class, um, most of the time students would sit together or cluster together. No, they sit together with their friends. So when you ask them to group themselves, more likely they group with their friends. This is good when if you want them to start the activity, the discussion right away, because they can start the discussion because they know everyone else in the group. Okay, so that's grouping students according to their probably the people they are seated with. So you can ask them to, let's say, form a dyad or a triad. So it's going to be easy for them to group themselves. So that's the last, no, the sixth way of grouping students into learning groups. Again, going back, no, so there are six ways of assigning uh, students into cooperative learning groups. First one is instructor assigned groups. Okay, so especially if you are planning to organize a home-based, okay, home-based grouping, you can actually assign students, no, based on this format. No? So you come up with probably a diagnostic test, and based on the result of the test, you assign students into the different learning groups. Okay. Second is randomly assigning groups. So just like as I mentioned before, no, when I teach, I was teaching PE, for example, I would simply ask my students to group themselves. First, I would ask them to sit alphabetically and to count up. So the first five belongs to one group, second five belongs to the second group, the third five belongs to the third group, and so on and so forth. Or you can ask them to count off, no, and group all ones together, or twos, or threes, and so on and so forth. As randomly assigning students into groups. And the third one is social integration group, where you ask the students to name the people that they would like to work with, no, that they prefer to work with, and people that they do not like to work with. So this will serve as basis for the teacher to assign the members of different groups. And fourth is subject matter related groups or same interest groups. So you assign students according to their interest. If they have similar interest, it's going to be easy for them to work. Like for example, if they like to play basketball together, then maybe you can group them according to their sports interest. And fifth is geographic groups, where the students are assigned to groups based on the place where they live, no? Community. So the idea here is if they need to meet, no, together as a group, it's going to be easy for them. Just like what I've been doing, especially during the pandemic, no, where there is restriction of travel. So students, if they need to really like gather and discuss something face to face, they can do it because they live in the same geographical location. And finally, self-selected groups where you simply ask, no, the example simply ask the students to group, get a partner for the sharing or form a triad and so on. Okay, so those are the six ways of assigning students into cooperative learning groups. Thank you, and once again, good morning.